So Verdansk has been back for over a week or so, and I want to kind of give my initial thoughts and feedback and general overview of the game, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that have been kind of on the sidelines figuring out, hey, what's going on? Is the game back? Those types of things. But then there's also people that maybe do have a little bit of feedback, even though they are enjoying the game, on things that they can improve over the next iteration or whatever the case is. But one thing I will preface this discussion with is there's going to be a lot of people disagreeing in the comment section, which is perfectly fine. And I'm not even advocating for certain changes. I'm just giving my initial impressions and overall opinions from playing the game for the last 7 or 10 days or so. And one thing to keep in mind is when they do make decisions, there's going to be certain things that impact players positively to start the game and keep playing the game. And ideally, most of the decisions are these things, which generally make the player base happier. Example of this, which we'll talk about later, is the default loadouts. Right now, they're okay, they're serviceable for someone coming back, but them expanding on those options and giving people even better options across the board to choose from, instead of an 8 attachment kilo and an HDR, maybe you'd have a primary and a secondary that mesh well within the meta, or a perk selection that is pretty much meta, so that they can go ahead and jump in with as low a barrier entry to get started, and then find out if they're really enjoying it, and then they can get into build crafting of the weapon. Overall, I think that helps people start playing the game and keep playing the game. If they miss a season, the new update, those weapons are already going to be in there. That's another engaging factor, which I think is a positive for the player base as a whole. Then there's different decisions where maybe they're not necessarily deal breakers, but people kind of give or take those types of things. So an example of this is in the Gulag right now, you don't get any plates, but for some people, if they added 2 plates, they're probably going to be like, well, that's okay, that's good, that's bad, that sucks, that's great, whatever. But they're not going to actively quit the game because they added 2 plates to the Gulag. Like, that's kind of a minor thing, not a deal breaker for most people. Maybe some of you will disagree in the comments, that's fine, but I kind of want to set the benchmark for kind of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about different elements. Then there's going to be a ton of people that have certain deal breakers within the game. This is actively encouraging you to stop playing the game. So for an example of this is one thing that a lot of people are complaining about right now, and it's highly contentious, is one-shot sniping. Obviously, if you're getting one-shot sniped, boo-hoo, it sucks, right? But then if you're on the opposite end, it feels amazing that you can actually snipe in a battle royale, which is kind of a core component of battle royales. Obviously, you got to thread the needle on where the balance is so it's not completely broken, but it can still one-shot. And removing that, there's a certain percentage of the player base that is a deal breaker. They will immediately stop playing the game. So they got to be very careful with those types of things so that they can go ahead and try and keep as many players as possible enjoying the game. And then we all get to enjoy the game, because realistically, we want to be able to all enjoy the game and have something fun to play. One thing that I think that the early version of the game has already done, I say early because they reverted a lot of things. They didn't revert everything. There's some very subtle things that they intentionally did not revert, because even when the first game came out, we didn't have armor satchels, so that's currently in the game. That wasn't in the game previously at launch. There's certain zone things. There's a lot of things that they did not revert. Buy station cost and all these other quality of life things they brought in over the years. They've kind of incorporated a lot of those with the HUD or whatever the case is. But one thing I think they've really executed really well, and they got to go in and kind of figure out how they can maintain this part of it, is the appropriate amount of friction within the game. And that's like there's certain amount of the game pushing back against you. This could be with regains, cash flow, plates, TTK, and just the zone pools, just making the game hard enough where, like, if you are decently skilled, you're going to get more wins. But even if you're not totally skilled, you still have a chance to win. And there is a little bit of a learning curve where you kind of get used to the game, but the skill gap isn't so high that it's off-putting to new or returning players. So you kind of have that balance of different things. So barrier entry, pretty low, and they can continue to expand on that. Wins feel hard, which is a huge point of a battle royale. At a certain point with Urzikstan and some of the other maps that we've had, even on Rebirth, for example, Resurgence, wins do not feel all that rewarding and did not feel rewarding. I think around Caldera, is kind of when the win started feeling less rewarding. And there's a lot of different elements that played in this. Could have been buy station cost to buy people back, Gulag tokens, redeploy tokens, and all these other things. Being able to buy your gun from the loadout or from the buy station directly instead of getting a loadout. The economy, there's a lot of variables, 101 variables there where the devs really got to fine tune it and figure out what the root cause is. And I don't think that's an easy job, but they got to do it, right? To continue to advance the game and progress it without making it feel stale after 6 months, which they already have some things planned, but we'll go through a lot of that stuff. In terms of the pros, I don't have a ton of pros to talk about because I think the game is in a really good spot. I think there's a lot of things that they did would make it feel awesome. It's fun to play. Even when you're losing, it's still a lot of fun, which, like I said, I could win before and it was still kind of boring of a game in Urzikstan and prior. One of the front runners that I will talk about, though, in terms of key changes, even though there's too many to list, so even though the pro part of this video will probably be relatively short, I think the casual mode is a huge leap forward in terms of being able to split the player base to a more casual audience to get acclimated to the game. Maybe you want to do camos, make it still feel like a battle royale without jumping into plunder. It gives you that like a little bit of autonomy because it's not a full lobby of sweats. There are sweats that are playing it. That's inherently was expected. I don't think they're going to monitor that aspect fully because at the end of the day, it still ends up being what, maybe 10% of the lobby is sweaty and then the 90%'s literally AI, which will still be a better experience than a casual just jumping into a regular match where people have been playing for the past 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and they've gotten a little bit better at the game. And a lot of the casuals kind of slipped off. It did have too high of a barrier to entry with weapon leveling and a lot of these other nonsense that it seems like they're trying to solve. So I think that's a huge W. We'll see kind of how that adapts over time and kind of how that part works. So now let's get into cons. I do have quite a bit that I'll talk about that I think are just quality of life sometimes can improve the game. So for example, straightforward one is Death's Door. This is a mechanic when you get really low HP, your heartbeat starts pumping and it's like boom, 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 boom. And then you have all the like the red haze on your screen, obstruction of view. It's like, well, the penalty is already pretty bad that you're already 1 HP. Why do you need all this other nonsense? I get the immersive element to it, but I think that is something that shouldn't be the case, right? Like, I think that's a little bit more of a immersive thing. Like maybe if you're playing a campaign, but in a PvP match, like the person already got first shot on me. The TTK is already kind of fast. So now I'm one shot and then my heart, I can't hear, I can't see clearly. And then now I'm at a disadvantage and I have low health. So I think that's something that they could address or figure out. This is something that they've tackled a few times, but I don't think they've ever found the happy medium or the sweet spot. Ground loot. This is another one that's pretty contested. And I think this one gets a little bit wishy-washy with some people where they feel like they take it to an extreme. When I say, oh, the ground loot's trash, people are like, well, it's supposed to be bad and you're not supposed to have a full attachment kitted loadout. Duh. That we're not asking for that. You don't have to go use hyperbole to try and make a point. That's not even, you're not addressing an issue that we're talking about. So for example, it would be nice just to get an SMG with one attachment, maybe, and it just be the mag. Maybe you get a 40 round mag instead of the default 30 and not some atrocious 6 zoom optic. Like that's it. I don't want like a OP meta. I just want a basic gun that I can get off the ground. Maybe you mix in the snipers like you do have and shotguns occasionally on the floor loot, but it should be weighted towards a little bit of SMG and rifle off the rip. And then obviously when you get your loadout, you can get whatever the heck you want. But I think even something as simple as that could be addressed. I think the volume of contracts off rip and then each zone closure, they do add contracts, but I feel like the volume isn't as high as it should be. Especially when the middle of the game, you're like, where the heck are contracts? There's like none near me. And it's like the volume just isn't there. So it makes it a little bit more of a rubbing point where it's like, I want to engage with the game, but there's not enough contracts. And I think that one could be a little bit debated. The lack of plates being guaranteed in a chest is also like a rubbing point for some. Some people are like, oh, it's not a big deal. I always have full plates. All right, cool. For people that are actually playing the game, when you do regain and you end up with only 2 plates and you don't have a satchel and you go around and you open up 5 chests, you don't really get that much money unless it's a gold one, and you're not going to get a plate really unless it's the blue one. So it's kind of like there's a little bit too much like dragginess in that mid game if you are trying to regain. The game is very punishing, so you're going to often be on a regain, and I think it should be like a little bit of a slider where they're moving it over where you're at least guaranteed 1 plate. But don't go fully where it's like, oh yeah, you open up regular chests, it's going to give you a satchel every time. Like, we're not going to that extreme. Just like so that you have a reliably consistent way that when you are coming back looting, you will have the chests that are at your disposal, and you will be able to get a full set of plates at least, so that when you do get into a gunfight with your floor loot, which happens to be trash if it's a sniper with no attach, like a weird optic on an SMG or whatever, you're already at a disadvantage, right? So I think there's a balancing act that they can do there. But again, some of these things aren't deal breakers. So they could change some of these things, and people are like, man, an SMG came out with a 40 round mag and no optic, I'm quitting the game. I mean, that sounds weird if that's actually happening. So it's kind of like where they can change things and can't change things, a little bit of balance. Death's Door, same thing. I don't think they make that change. People are like, damn it, I really liked being one shot and having the heartbeat. Like, what? Like, are we being serious here? I don't know. Partial fall damage, I don't really like I think they have modified it a little bit, but it still feels unnecessary. The default loadout, I already talked about a little bit earlier. I think their first attempt was okay. It's like a B or a C. Better than what we had before, straight F. All the loadouts were just F builds. These ones are at least semi-usable, but I don't think they really adhere to the current meta that we have. The HDR should be combined with a sniper support weapon, and then the Kilo should be combined with an SMG. SOG, C9, yada, 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 whatever other SMG you want. And that would at least, cool, you just grab that one and boom, you're done. So I think there's a little bit work to be done there, because the AMAX, Grau, AK-74 and SMGs are really not in those default builds. And we know that those are part of the meta. They did include the Kilo and the HDR, which are nice, but hopefully they continue to tune that. There's still a lot of, especially on older guns, there's visual recoil and general recoil needs a little bit of a tuning. They got to adjust the TTKs, buff some of those guns up for a lot of those. And I know if you're on controller, it's not as big of an issue. It still does bother the game visuals. But in general, I think keyboard and mouse definitely struggles with this significantly more, because a lot of it, if they can't see the target, they can't shoot it. At least with controller, you do have aim assist guiding, and it does a really good job of that. So much so that some people struggle to distinguish between aim assist and like some kind of cheating. So that's up to the individual, but that's kind of how that part goes. But like I said, the TTKs can be brought up to be a little bit more competitive. I think there is tuning that they can do to the long range meta to make it more viable. We'll get in that when we get into the sniper section, because I think there's tuning to do with that. Vehicles could still be better. I think they are significantly better. As someone who got over 1,500 safes on the map that first weekend, using the helicopter, infinitely better than it was, but not nearly as not as good as it was in Warzone 1. A lot of the vehicles, they are pretty tanky. It's hard to shoot people out of with a regular gun, but the handling is still a little bit whack. The get up and go is still a little bit of whack. Those types of things they can tune. So hopefully they do another tuning pass on vehicles. I like that they can blow up with the RPG and the C4 and grenades and all that type of stuff. Awesome. Keep it that way. I've been using vehicles infinitely more than I was in the previous iterations because they sucked so much. The only one you use is the electric vehicle. But other than that, mostly trash. You did have other ways to maneuver around the map, but I think they've done a good job on handling that. Movement, I think generally they ended up hitting a relatively decent sweet spot. I still think there's still some tuning that could be done in terms of drop shotting and the bunny hop. The original Warzone 1 had those, so I'm not asking for anything that we didn't already have. I felt like the drop shot and standing was infinitely more snappy. And right now we don't even have a bunny hop, even though I'm not a huge bunny hopper. I still think it's a skill that isn't incredibly broken, but it is an expression of skill. If somebody wants to learn it, you still got to gun them at the end of the day. I like the option there. I don't think it makes the skill gap insanely high, especially with the TTK. You maybe do one hop before you're dead. So there's that, because there are penalties with ADS and all those types of things. I think there's also a little bit of areas where the game is being debated. And we've already talked about some of these. I think the TTK one is a little bit of a hot topic, because this one may be a deal breaker for some. For me, it's not. Like, if they up the TTK, I'm fine. If they leave it as is, I'm fine. I'm not going to advocate for either way. They'll have their data. They'll have to make a decision. And hopefully it's not a deal breaker for too many people, whatever they decide, whether they leave it or they change it. Either way, I'm having a lot of fun with it. You do die pretty quick. And for me, who's 37 years old, I'm dead before I get to react to the gunfight, which is okay. When I shoot somebody in the back, they're dead before they get to react to the gunfight. So it's like, it is what it is. It's a lower skill gap. And it does allow you to shoot a sniper. But I think there's things that they can do to make the shooting feel better. And that's where it brings us to the one-shot sniping. So one-shot sniping, like I mentioned way earlier, this is a deal breaker for a lot of people. So in my opinion, it cannot be removed. That's my opinion though. If they decide to do it, I think likely they will do it in ranked, which comes out in the mid-season, which we'll talk a little bit about some of the upcoming updates that already planned and already been announced before the game even dropped. But maybe some of you guys missed them, maybe you didn't, but we'll reiterate some of those things. So I think they need to buff more snipers, and they have to be balanced in a way where maybe they have more flinch, slower ADS, slower rechamber speed, mag size, whatever they need to do. But I think the bullet velocity, I mean, it's good. It's easy to snipe right now. So I wouldn't recommend them change it significantly in that area. I know that's going to sound crazy, and people are going to be pissed off in the comments, and people are going to be like, hell yeah, JGOD. So they're going to be both sides, because these are debated topics. It's okay. If you're on a heater and then you get sniped from Narnia, sorry. Maybe you should have been sniping. I don't know what to tell you. But either way, I think they can do that so that you have a little bit more variety in the long range, because right now it's pretty much HDR. I know the car is floor loot. You can get it one shot at certain ranges, but it's not an infinite one shot. So there's some balancing to be done to make more sniper options available. But like I said, maybe they increase flinch, ADS, speed, slow it down, sway, but still leave that lethality there. Just make it maybe a tad harder to do. And then how you also combat this is you make long range meta more effective. And you're probably thinking like, that's kind of crazy because the guns already shoot whatever. I think there's some things they can still do with visual. I think there's things that they can do with bullet velocity as a whole. I think the monolithic suppressor has kind of helped out in that regard. And I know this one's going to be a little bit more of a hot take, controversial maybe, is I think they should remove the wild card entirely. Make it so that you get overkill by default, because I think that was a positive that we had before, but make it so that we get 6 attachments. I know that sounds a little bit wild, because I feel like 6 attachments solves like 80% of the issues with the long range meta. You'll be able to just tack on recoil springs or overpressured as an extra attachment, because generally that is the 6th attachment that you put on if you go with an gunfighter, which gives you 8 attachments. And then the 7th or 8th is you only equipping them because you feel obligated. Most of those are like a waste of an attachment, but that would give us, I don't know. That's a little bit far off. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that would be game breaking either. I think it would just simplify the game, and you'd still have autonomy to run more options, because that one extra attachment can be significant for a lot of guns. They still need some tuning and stuff, but that would open the door and simplify loadout so that we don't have some people with 5, some people with 8. It's just 6, and it's simplified, and they can utilize that going forward. I think the other thing they can do is make an optic as an attachment a free attachment. That'd be the alternative. But those are just some suggestions. I don't care if those get made or not. I'm just throwing them out there, right? Like, those aren't deal breakers at all for me, but I think that could go a long way in solving some issues with a bunch of guns, especially the MW2 and MW3 guns. Gulag, we talked a little bit about this. Without plates in the Gulag, I don't think it's a deal breaker. It does feel fast. And it does feel like it benefits whoever stands still in ADSs. Not every case. You could say you're aggro and you're winning all your gulags. Cool. But from my experience, what I notice, if I kind of stand on the side, ADS, listen for footsteps, they give away their position. I usually throw my tactical or my lethal, and then that forces them to move. And while they're in transition, you kill them. That's pretty straightforward strategy with the fast CTK. When it's longer, it's going to rely a little bit more on accuracy. Those things will still be important, but you still kind of have a chance to re-engage and actually have a gunfight. And I think another option with this, which it may be a little bit more confusing, is that right now when you go to zone 1 to zone 2 to zone 3, you get a different loadout. Different sets of loadouts. Maybe after zone 1, you go 1 plate, 2 plate, 3 plate, something along those lines, and then Gulag closes. So I don't know. Again, that's not a deal breaker for me. That's just a thought. I don't think that's a deal breaker for a lot of people. More buy locations. This is one that's kind of weird because I feel like they missed a lot of the fan favorite locations of buy stations. When I play the map, I know one of the most iconic ones that we would always hit up, because they did move around a little bit after the first initial part of Warzone, because they found out that some of these things that were already kind of like, oh man, we already know the solution because you guys did it before, they're going to do again for a lot of these ones that were not deal breakers, that are straightforward, common sense changes. Is right next to Super, there's that buildings right across the street. There was like a buy station right there with the little munitions right there. And then you could either rotate to storage. You can go south towards Boneyard. You can kind of rotate around depending on where you want. You just take the vehicle, you cross the street, there's a little buy station, you pop it, boom, there you go. And sometimes it was in the parking lot of Super. So you kind of had those variant, and I think they're going to tune those a little bit. I don't know if they need more, but they definitely need them to move a little bit, because static, I feel like for a whole season just makes it so that the matches feel a little bit more samey. So even if they don't add more, I think using the ones that we would already utilize would be a good change. Now we'll get into some of the basic stuff, which obviously is always going to be a problem, is certain bugs. I think it's relatively bug free, but there are issues. I think the scavenger has a display bug where it'll show you have more ammo than you actually do. If you press down on the D-pad or open up your inventory, you can see your actual ammo count, and it's not accurately reflecting what is on your HUD when you're next to your gun. That's not accurate. I believe they're aware of it. I forwarded this. I've shown examples with multiple examples. I believe there is going to be a fix for that one relatively soon. Loadouts freezing and resetting. I think they've already worked on this one or addressed it. I never ran into this issue. I still haven't ran into this issue, but I have seen clips of this being an issue, even though they said they're aware of it and they addressed it. I think a patch went out for that. Some contract spawn locations are bugged. They are aware of this. Like if you grab a contract next to train station, because train station is going to be opening in future content very soon, the recon will pull into the inside of train station. Well, obviously that doesn't make sense, but it's just a bug. They're aware of it. Straightforward. And then one other one that everyone has been kind of like spamming me about is if you have an AMD GPU, there's performance issues and crashes and things related to that. And then there's also another one where it's only impacting a certain group of people. I don't know how exactly it works, but basically after you played the game for about an hour, you're automatically disconnect from the game. And I don't know what the heck's causing it. No one really knows a workaround. I believe the devs are aware of this, but I don't know if a fix is due. So if you are on PC and you are struggling with that issue, just make it a habit of resetting your game until that's fully addressed. What we already know is coming with season 3.5. We're getting ranked play, which this is going to solve a lot of the people that have sweatiness and they're tired of getting sniped. Go play ranked. You're not going to have snipers be an issue. We also have the train being added within the mid-season, I believe. That's the one that goes around the map. And then later on, they'll add the recon and buy station or portable UAV on there or whatever the heck it's called. And then you're going to have the train station opening. You can see it's mostly already like open. There's just some boards and doors that are closed, but other than that, it'll be right open and playable. Zips will be added to the game in Battle Royale, just like they are in Plunder. And this is a very weird, nuanced conversation because I think people get confused because if you've actually played in Plunder at all, I'm going to show you some examples in the background. There's plenty of zips that just make getting around those certain areas a little bit faster. and less of a pain in the butt. It's not like you have to go into hospital, go into an elevator, go up a thing, go around another thing, then come up a ladder, and then go through a room. It's like, no, you just take the zip and you're completely vulnerable, even though they're the new ones where you can hip fire or whatever. It's just a little bit more seamless. Those, I don't think most people generally have an issue with those. I know if you like to hardcore camp one POI and that's the only way up is a ladder, you probably love the way it is right now. But the other way is not like bad. You just place your 2 bouncing betties and you lock down that area, right? And you can just camp differently, camp smarter, I guess, whatever. So that I think is going to be a good addition. It's going to make some of those areas feel just a little bit smoother, faster, less time spending in a stairwell, but it's not going to like, oh man, these are broken or whatever. Those are straightforward. The part that where people are heavily against is the balloons/drones. They were balloons back before, and they converted them to drones that would move with the zone. Those are not coming back in my opinion. I don't think they are. The vast majority of sentiment is negative around those. I don't think deployable balloons, anything related to balloons, or drones, that stuff I do not see coming back because of the negative sentiment around it. If anyone's asking for these, they are generally in the vocal minority, in my opinion, and everything I've seen about them, they are completely unnecessary, especially if the vehicles are operating good. Right now they're okay, but if they're better, then they're even less of a need for these because your main mode of transportation will be your feet. If you jump off the top of a large building or a vehicle, and that's straightforward. The thing that I could see coming back is the PRD. And I don't know if that's set for mid-season or later. That's just a little Mary Poppins thing. This thing is kind of trash, if we're honest. It does have a little bit of utility in certain scenarios, but they're super loud. You're pinged on the map when you activate them. There's significant delays when you're getting on them and getting off, so you're very vulnerable. And they're just like only used for one player. It's not like reusable or anything like that. So I can see those coming back, and I don't think those are really a deal breaker. I think I've never died to someone using a PRD. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever died to one. I have definitely died using one though. So maybe it's like a trap. I know people have done some skillful things with them, but they are very niche scenarios to pull off. I think also at some time soon, there's supposed to be bunkers opening up. Obviously, they're already around the map with key cards and combinations. I think those will open up fairly soon. And Stadium, I think it'll have multiple openings. We'll have the mid-level open the way we did with like some of those key cards that we had back in the day. And then I think eventually they will open up the dome and you'll have access to the interior, something along those lines. But we'll see kind of how that works. Overall, I've been incredibly happy in like with where they landed with the game. I've talked to a few devs independently and privately. They like the numbers on the game have overshot their expectations significantly. I wish we had other forms of access to numbers other than hearsay and Steam, which is wildly unreliable for several different games. For example, I'll give you a dumb example because it is an example, is how many people on Fortnite are on Steam right now? And you'll say the game is dead because there's 0. There's other ways to play the game and it's not fully representative of the player base as a whole. I know it's a silly example, but just like COD, there's people on Battle.net, Xbox PC, PlayStation, Xbox, eventually on the Switch 2 or whatever the heck. Either way, there's a lot of avenues and we will never really know unless they come out with the numbers. And even the things I'm hearing from devs, that's just a generalization that the game has positive player count more than they expected. That's a W, but who knows? I know my viewership has generally been higher. That's a good indicator. Generally, the comments have been significantly more positive on every platform, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, literally everywhere. It's the vast majority positive. Obviously, there's still people like, game's already dead, wait a month, nostalgia, blah, blah, whatever. I'm happy enjoying the game. I don't actually care if people care that I'm happy. It just is what it is. Hopefully you're enjoying the game. I've had a lot of fun with it, and hopefully they continue to kill it and don't do anything that's going to be a deal breaker. I think that's the real key there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and my thoughts. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.